Hello, everyone. Glad to see you all back after all these years. Yeah, I will talk about extending Zabbix. So let's begin. So why would you even want to extend Zabbix? No matter how hard we try to make Zabbix contain all the functionality for monitoring, it's not possible. There will always be one guy that needs more. So being extensible is exactly to make that guy happy. So what extensibility means? Zabbix is open source, so you can download the source code and change it to your needs. And are you extending Zabbix in this case? Yes, but does that mean Zabbix is extensible? Definitely not. Extensibility means when a program allows a user to change its behavior without changing the source code. And that's exactly why Zabbix has a lot of extensions. There are really quite a few of those. I will be covering those that are highlighted. That's front-end modules, front-end rebranding, agent 2 plugins, user parameter, system run, external check of server, HTTP agent item, webhook media type, script item, and Zabbix API. Let's start with the front-end modules. First of all, you need to have basic understanding of what MVC is. Imagine there's a PHP file that takes care of one page, and it, for example, lists hosts. So the PHP code connects to the database using SQL language, then it performs some business logic in PHP language, and then it outputs the data in HTML. So you have SQL code in one file, PHP code, and HTML code. That's really hard to maintain such file, and yeah, especially if the data set is complex. So in this case, there is an idea of MVC where you separate that into 3 different files. One is dealing with database, another was dealing with business logic called controller. So with database, it's called model. With business logic called controller, and the file that takes care about the view is called view. In Zabbix, it's a bit simpler. We combine the controller and module into one component and call it action, and the view is a view. So it works as shown. The business logic is in one file, the view is another file, and only the action talks to the API, sometimes directly to the database in some rare cases. So when you click configuration hosts, what actually happens? The click executes the URL where the action name is specified, and Zabbix knows that action named host.list is taken care by 2 files. One is an action, ccontroller hostlist.php, which collects the data, and then there's another file for the view, takes care configuration.host.list.php. It, let's say, outputs that data, and the data variable is automatically available in the view. So in order to create a module, you need front-end, and you need a database to which it is connected, correctly configured database. If you want to quickly to get Zabbix and try, I suggest you to take a Docker image or some cloud image, or at least use our packages. Let's take a look at a simple example where we create a module called myAddress. The idea of the module is to add another page to the menu that lists or that outputs the external IP address of the host where front-end is running. A really simple task. So the controller will, well, the action will make one HTTP request, and the view will output what it returns, and that's it. So we want something like that. Another menu entry and our external IP address. In this case, it's replaced, but don't worry. So it's easy, right? Remember the famous Gentoo meme? And it's only, this module contains only 4 files with really small content. So first file is manifest.json. This file is like a configuration of your module. Basically, we want in this file to define an action and action name and say that this action is taken care of this action file and this view file. Here is how it looks like. The main things are highlighted in red. That's the namespace that will be used in the code, and you see the action name and the files that take care of this action. In the action, you need to implement one PHP class called, as you see, and that class must implement doAction function. In that function is actually happening what all the business logic of your module, in our case, one HTTP request. So it looks like this. Again, the important parts are highlighted. And you see doAction class, we make one call, and whatever we get, we put to ccontroller response data PHP class, which will direct this data to the view. And what we do here also is we disable the session ID validation. As you can see, this is because we don't want to deal with passing that session ID in our URLs. In our case, it's only one URL. The view is really simple. It's, there is no restrictions from the Zabbix side on how the view looks like. It can be empty file. It doesn't care. So in our case, we just create one CWidget class, which is one CWidget object, which is, let's say, a page. We set its HTML title, and we add one div with our data. As you can see, we take the myIP key of data associated array. Whatever controller is set as a response must be associated array. It doesn't matter what's inside, but it must be associated array, otherwise you will get an error. So last file, module.php, is optional, but if you want to add a menu entry, you must use it, and that's what we want. We want just to add one menu entry to the main menu to be able to call our action. So again, highlighted things are important, the namespace and the, basically we say, give me the menu, and to the root of this menu add my address element, and when it's clicked, call this action that we define in our module. Basically, we call ourselves. So now you discover the module by going to Administration General Modules and click Scan Directory, and your module must appear in the list in disabled state. You click it, and your module gets disabled. And if you're interested what happens in the database, just one row is added there with the enabled state. So this is what you should get in the end. Next, as Carlis was saying, that was module of type module, let's say, and in the 6.0 it's planned to have a module of type widget, in which case, besides Zabbix widgets, you can add your own with actually the module. The module will be like a feeding your widget, and controlled by the widget will be controlled by module. And actually all Zabbix widgets that are currently there are also to be transferred to modules. So that's what's happening right now, what Carl said, and we hope this will be available as soon as possible. Another thing that you can do with front-end is rebranding. So what can you rebrand? The login page logo, the menu logo, the compact menu logo, the help link, the footer, and remove the Zabbix support and integration elements from the menu. How you do it? You just add one file with the following contents. If you just want to remove links to support and integration, you return the empty array. Otherwise, you add those variables if you want to replace other things also. And the image paths do not have to be URLs. They might be passed to the file path on the file system. And that's approximately how it may look like. So let's talk about extending agent. I'll talk about agent 2. When agent 2 was introduced in 4.4, there was already the way to extend it with built-in plugins. For that, you need to have Zabbix agent 2 sources. You need to recompile your plugin together with Zabbix agent 2, and every time you upgrade agent 2, you again need to recompile it. That is a must. This is not very convenient. So we worked hard on changing that, and since 6.0, we have the loadable agent 2 plugins, which means you just compile your plugin once, and you don't need to recompile anything when you're upgrading agent 2. An example of loadable plugin is on the screen. This plugin is doing the same thing as agent module was doing, displaying external IP of the host where agent 2 is running by implementing one additional metric called myIP. Important thing here is in the import section, plugin support components must be there. That allows communication between agent 2 and your plugin. Your plugin is like a standalone application, and they are communicating with help of those plugin support components. The key part here is export function. That's one of the interfaces that you must implement in the plugin, and the exporter is simplest one for adding new metrics. And inside this function happens exactly what your item does. And whatever it returns will be the returned value when metric is called. And then you just register it, and the main function is a must since we're a standalone application. There are examples. This all code is available on GitHub. The link will be in the end, so don't take code from the presentation. Installation of the agent 2 is simple. I created the makefile. You can check its contents, but if you use my code, then it's just sudo make install, which will put your plugin, compile your plugin, and put it to the highlighted path. And then with this command, you can tell agent 2 where your plugin is, and that's it. You can test it. It should work. The same thing can be done with user parameter, of course. You all know. That's another way of extending Zabbix. And same thing can be done with system.run. And of course, these work for both agents, version old agent and agent 2. Let's talk about extending server. In 4.0, Zabbix HTTP agent item type appeared, and that allowed a lot of additional monitoring using HTTP protocol and monitoring of the instances that have HTTP endpoint. In order to use that, the server or proxy must be compiled with libcurl support. An agent is not needed for that. Don't care about libcurl if you use our packages, it's already there. It looks something like that. You click create item and choose type HTTP agent, you specify the URL to talk to it, and there are a lot of parameters in this form. Couldn't fit them all in, specifying the headers, specifying do you need to fetch the headers, you can specify SSL options, basic authentication, and so forth. Since 4.4, since we already had the HTTP agent item, we thought that similar approach could be added for alerting, because often you don't want to receive the email when the problem is happening, but you want to have a ticket created, for example, and these guys always, in most cases, they have API that works through HTTP protocol. So, but we understood that in this case it's not enough to provide form with parameters, because the communication is very often very complex. So we provided with a text box where you can put your JavaScript and take care of the whole communication with the ticketing system or chat or messenger yourself. Also, the parameters here are important because the macros are not substituted in your JavaScript code. So if you want to use macros in JavaScript code, translate them to parameters with this way. Of course, creating JavaScript is not easy for many people, so we do that for themselves. For the most famous components, we have these already out of the box. There are many more integrations with other systems out there on the internet created by community. And of course, we also, with each version, try to create more and more of those. Our integration team is working on that hard. They write a lot of JavaScript code, so thanks, guys. So since version 5.2, we understood that same approach as with webhook, where you provide a way to write your JavaScript to control the HTTP endpoint completely. Same approach to provide for monitoring. And script item appeared. Basically, you can see the form is similar to webhook. You have basically the text box where you write the PHP code, JavaScript code, and parameters to get the macros. This name, script, is sometimes confusing for people. They think that, okay, I'll click script, and then I can do whatever there, bash script or Python script. It's not like that. Basically, you should think of script item like JavaScript item. So it's only allows you to write JavaScript code. And in order to allow users to simplify their job, we created JavaScript class called HTTP request. It's really well documented, all its methods and how to work with it. But basically, yeah, you can use that. Well, you should use that class for all your HTTP requests that you do in the JavaScript code. That's an example of the script. It uses the HTTP request, and then it logs in using username and password specified as the payload or the body of the request. Then it parses, it gets the response and takes the access token from that response and uses another call to get the actual data using that token. So another way of extending Zabbix is using external check item. It's very well known, I guess. Many use it. It's if you have some script or binary, no matter what, and you want to call it, and whatever it returns would be the metric data, you should use external check. Your executable must reside in special directory, and that's it. The server will call it from there. Let's see, we have example app server status script. we want to use it, so we create item of type external check, and we put the item key as exactly the name of our executable. And in square brackets, you can have optional parameters. They are not required. And in this case, the actual call will look like this. Let's talk about Zabbix API for integration. That also can be used for integration with the different systems. What Zabbix API does, it retrieves configuration, it modifies configuration, gets history or trend data. For example, Grafana is using exactly that. Then you can control your configuration import export with Zabbix API. You can migrate environments, or you can have automatic configuration management with Zabbix API, for example, which is doing Ansible Zabbix community module collection. If you use Ansible, you have a playbook to, for example, create hosts. Then you can use the same playbook with this collection to, for example, control this host in Zabbix installation through Zabbix API. So if host is not there, it will be automatically created. If you modify something in your playbook, for example, you add another host group or you link another template to that host, it will be also automatically done by this module collection. In the future, it's idea to add also support for pushing values through Zabbix API. I'm not saying anything is already done in this regard, but at least sometimes users ask for this feature. We have Zabbix API, we control configuration and stuff. Why not push also values using that instead of using a Zabbix sender or implementing Zabbix sender protocol? How Zabbix API is implemented? It's implemented using JSON RPC protocol over HTTP protocol. Our API is not RESTful. The client must always use post method, and even if you get data, you still use post method and the body. So in each request, the body is obligatory and the post method is also obligatory. The bodies are in JSON format. Zabbix API is shipped together with frontend. You don't have to install it separately. And the frontend itself is using Zabbix API. There are a lot of integrations out there. So if you integrate something, make sure you checked the internet or our integrations page for available solution. If you are doing something from scratch, there are many chances that you shouldn't be doing it. So as I said, all this code is on GitHub. Don't copy from the presentation that will be available later. You can use my GitHub and everything is there. As to the workshop tomorrow, yeah, I remind you that it's at 8:45 and we will be writing a front-end module. You're welcome to join. Thank you.
Dimir, don't go far away. Your presentation was, I would say, made community quite curious about a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I will start with some simple ones. So you told about adding front-end modules, but a lot of people seem to be worrying that if they will upgrade their front-end, the modules will be gone. Is that the case?
It's not the case. We already done that. Only thing that might happen, some things might break. Yeah, there's unfortunately no guarantee. We don't have special separate framework for modules, which is like guaranteed to work with upgrade. Basically, when you create a module, you use all that is all the PHP classes that are available in the whole front end, and of course, we do a lot of changes there, and those changes are breaking. So I would say, sadly, it depends on how you write module. You should always think that, well, if you use some basic class like output the div element or something, it's not likely to be changed. But if you use some really complex classes which have a lot of methods, it might be possible that something will break there. But the module will not disappear for sure.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. So in terms of performance, what kind of modules or modifications from what you already called, you would say, except front-end modules, would be the lightweight?
The lightweight? Yeah, I would say that if instead of using user parameters and system.run for agent, I would recommend to use agent2 plugins, loadable plugins. So if you use version 6.0 or more and you use agent2, try at least to create loadable plugin. Take an example here and modify the do action function to do what you want. See the result. It should be much faster. Of course, if you call user parameter once per 10 minutes or something, it's fine. You will not get any performance benefits. But if you have a lot of user parameters, I know that some installations have a lot of them and call them very often. So they are spending resources or nothing. I would say create agent2 loadable plugin, or at least try and see how it goes.
Thank you.